Hey guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. I'm so excited to sit down and talk to you guys about my blush collection. So I've been going through and ranking different areas of my makeup collection. I did highlighters and bronzers, but I thought for blushes I would switch it up and do something a little bit different. I've seen a couple of blush related videos pop up in my subscription feed from Mandy Lee, Michelle Wong, Jessica Braun, and they're so much fun because they've been going through their collection and answering different questions about them. Each of their videos was just a little bit different, so I'll link them in the description box below, but I know some of them were based on the All About Eyeshadow palette tag from Allie Glines and Samantha March, which I just loved. So this is kind of like that tag, but related to blushes. So I'm going to answer a bunch of questions like my most used blush, my most expensive, underrated, overrated. So I went through my collection, I pulled out all of my blushes, and I chose them for these answers. So I'm excited to share it with you in today's video. Let me start with my most used everyday blush. For me, the blush that I reach for that I love to wear on an everyday basis would be the Buxom Wanderlust Primer-Infused Blush in the shade Seychelles. I feel like that's a tongue twister. I love this formula. I think that it is so smooth and blendable. Now my blush looks a little bit weird in the pan. It's looked like this for as long as I've had it, and I haven't had it for a super long time, so it's not expired. A couple of you guys told me that yours looks like this as well. I think it's just the way they mix the product. It has like a little bit of texture to it, but the actual formula applies to the face very, very beautifully. It's a really smooth blush, and in the pan it kind of looks matte, but it does have a very subtle sheen to it, so it looks incredibly healthy and just naturally glowy on the skin. It's not shimmery or glittery, and there's not even like a super intense sheen, but it's very, very subtle. So I just feel like my skin always looks so healthy when I use this, especially because I do use a lot of mattifying base products, so this helps to add in just a little bit of like that natural skin-like glow. They do have a lot of great shades. They have brighter shades, deeper shades. The blushes themselves are pretty pigmented and you can build them up. So this is a great line. No matter what your skin tone is, you're going to be able to find something that works well for you, but Seychelles is definitely my go-to. So for the category worth the hype, I have to go with the CoverFx Monochromatic Blush Duos. I love these so much. They have a lot of beautiful shades, and again, they have light shades, they have deep shades. This formula is pretty pigmented, so you can really build it up to be pretty intense on the cheeks. And I love the fact that you do get two different options. This is a little bit more of an expensive blush. It's $38, but because you get two options, I do feel like it's worth the money because it's very customizable. You can use the shimmer side or the matte side or mix them together. I find that they apply well to the cheeks and they stay in place really well throughout the day, which is something important for me because I have oily skin. A lot of blushes tend to wear off by the end of the day, but these stay in place well. They're packaged so beautifully. And a bonus is that I've gotten a lot of these during the Ulta 21 Days of Beauty, so I've gotten them for half off. Now I do think they are worth the $38. I paid $38 for my first one, but the fact that you can usually get them on sale during the 21 Days of Beauty is a big bonus. But in my mind, they're worth the hype. I love them so much. On the other hand, a blush formula that is not worth the hype in my mind would be the Charlotte Tilbury Cheek to Chic blushes. I did own one of these and I thought it performed well. I thought the formula was okay. There wasn't necessarily anything super special about it, but it did work well, which is why it kind of lasted in my collection for a little while. But that being said, every time I wore it, I wasn't necessarily thrilled with how my blush looked. With the Cheek to Chic blushes, you're supposed to like swirl your brush around the outside and then like dab the inner color right on the apples of your cheeks, but I just feel like they're very, very overhyped. They just performed like any other blush in my collection, so I wasn't super impressed by them. I think they are like $40, so they're a little bit more expensive, and I don't know, I guess I just didn't really get the hype. I felt like they were very, very overrated. So the most expensive blush in my collection is almost something that I chose for the worth the hype category, but this is the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Blush. I do have a couple of these. I just chose Euphoric Fusion to share in today's video because it is a really pretty color. These are $40, so they are expensive. They're just as expensive as Charlotte Tilbury. I typically don't buy these unless I'm buying one during a Sephora VIB sale, because then I can get 20% off, and they're still on the more expensive side, but I do have a couple of these. I think that the formula is just so stunning. If you like more of a subtle natural blush, you're going to enjoy this formula. They have a colorful shade kind of mixed with a light reflecting shade, and some of them are a little bit more shimmery than others, but they just look so healthy and naturally glowy on the skin. It's really hard to explain how beautiful Hourglass products are until you try them. And again, they're expensive. This is a $40 blush. So typically I don't buy these unless I can get them for a discounted price, but I do really enjoy them. I've repurchased quite a few of these because I do tend to be a fan of more subtle blush overall, and I feel like I can go in with a heavy hand and still not get like a super intense look on the cheeks, which is what I typically prefer. The most affordable blush in my collection is from Essence. These are called the Blush. They retail for $2.99. I picked these up a few months ago and I love them. It just goes to show you don't have to spend a ton of money to get really high quality products. These perform extremely well. They're very smooth on the cheeks. They do have 2 matte formulas and then 2 like slightly shimmery formulas. My favorite is the shade Bespoke. A couple of you guys have asked me how this compares to Buxom Seychelles. It's definitely different. Seychelles is more pink toned and this one is like slightly bronzier, but they give a very similar effect to the cheeks. They have like a nice naturally glowy sheen. They blend out well, they stay in place well, and these are really, really nice. So if you're looking for an affordable option, I definitely recommend these. The newest blush in my collection is actually the Essence blush. I think that I bought these back in the spring because I was working on like an Essence video, and I haven't purchased any other new blushes since then, other than the new e.l.f. face duos. Those are like blush highlighter duos. So I guess technically those are my newest blushes. It just kind of depends on if you count them as a blush or not. I haven't purchased a lot of blush this year, so I would love to get your recommendations. I'm not looking to buy a ton of different options, but I do feel like it would be nice to maybe try a new formula over the next few months. Now, the oldest blush in my collection is definitely the Milani Baked Blush in the shade Luminoso. I don't know if this is the one that I've had for years and years. There's a video that I filmed like 6 years ago talking about this, so this might be the exact same one, or I might have decluttered that and repurchased it. I feel like maybe that's the case. I honestly can't remember, but I feel like if this was 6 years old, it wouldn't perform that well. It would be expired at this point. So there is a chance that this isn't super old and I did repurchase it, but I've had this shade in my collection for years and years. It was one of the first products that I purchased when I started watching YouTube videos because so many people raved about this shade in particular, but about the entire line. I would actually love to try more of their baked blushes. I just recently bought the Milani Baked Bronzer. I'm wearing it today and it's so blendable and smooth and subtle, but naturally beautiful. And I feel like their blushes are the same way. This is one of my go-tos, especially during the summertime. So I added this one in. I'm curious to know, what was your first blush, if you guys can remember? I mean, for me, it was a long time ago. I remember my mom took me to Walmart when I was like 13, and we bought just a few makeup products, all from CoverGirl, and my first blush was the CoverGirl Cheekers blush in the shade, oh shoot, I just looked it up. Oh, it was the shade Classic Pink, and I didn't actually end up wearing it that much because I felt like at that point when I was 13, like I wasn't really into blush. I was definitely into eyeliner. I went really heavy-handed with the eyeliner, but my very first blush was definitely that CoverGirl blush, and they still sell it to this day, which is crazy because that was so long ago. But if you guys remember your first blush, you'll have to let me know in the comments below. So for underrated, I wanted to mention the e.l.f. Primer-Infused Blushes. I know that people like these, but I still feel like as a whole, these are very, very underrated because if you took these out of e.l.f. packaging and put them in high-end packaging, I would think that you would find these at Sephora, honestly. They kind of expanded the line, so now they have matte blushes and shimmer blushes. They have a lot of shades and they're really intense. So you can definitely build these up to be really pigmented. They're incredibly blendable. They stay in place well, and I'm just continuously impressed by this formula. They work so well, and when I first got into blush, I was so frustrated because, I mean, this was years ago, I felt like drugstore blush did not last on my skin. By the end of the day, it completely faded and there wasn't really a point in applying it because after an hour or two, you couldn't see it. I mean, blush has come a really long way, but for a while I was convinced that like I could only buy expensive high-end blush. That is definitely not the case. I don't know if it was the case back then and I was kind of overlooking products, but it's definitely not the case now. You can pick up these $6 blushes and they perform extremely well and stay in place all day. I didn't really know what to choose for the overrated category because in my collection there wasn't necessarily a blush that stood out to me as like a super overrated formula. So I went with this one. This is the CoverGirl Pressed Powder Blush. I just chose one shade specifically. I don't know that I hear a ton of people raving about the ColourPop blushes, but in 2020 I have tried a couple of these and I'm just not like super blown away by them. Now I'm not talking the Super Shock blushes because I think those are really, really nice, but their pressed powder blushes just don't do it for me. I feel like they're a little bit dry, a little bit chalky. I mean, they perform okay, but I just feel like when I look at my collection as a whole, there are so many other formulas that I would typically reach for over ColourPop that I don't feel like I get super excited about the formula. I just feel like they do their cream cheek products so well. Their Super Shock highlighters, their body shimmers, their Super Shock blushes, that the pressed powder blushes and bronzers don't always compare. Again, they're not bad, but I do feel like a lot of people talk about them, and maybe it's just because when ColourPop releases a collection, they typically release like a blush or a bronzer, so they just kind of get talked about as the collection gets hype as well. But for me, they are a little bit overrated. Okay, I also added in these next 4 categories as well. As I was looking at my collection, I just thought it would be fun to answer these, so I would love to know your answers as well. But the first one is most surprising. I love when I'm not expecting to like a product and then I end up falling in love with it. I actually have a couple of videos talking about products that surprised me that I didn't expect to love, but I really ended up falling in love with them. So a formula that really surprised me would be the Flower Beauty Blush Bombs. Now, I'm not always a big fan of cream products. I want to be. They look amazing on the skin, but you know, based on my personal preferences, I do love powder products. At this point, all of the cream blushes have kind of made their way out of my collection over the years through my declutters, but the one formula that stays is this one from Flower Beauty. This formula is so interesting. I think they describe it as like almost like this gel texture, so it goes on the cheeks in such a beautiful way. You can apply it on top of creams or liquids or even powder. So I'm someone who uses a lot of powder to set my foundation into place. These still look really good on top of that powder. In addition to that, they stay in place really well. They have some gorgeous colors. You can sheer them out, you can build them up. As far as like cream or liquid blushes go, these are so super user-friendly. These could probably go under the underhyped category as well. I mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about these, so I do feel like there is some hype surrounding them, but if you're someone who doesn't typically like cream blushes and you kind of want to get into them, these are really nice because they're not your typical creams. They have a little bit more of like just an easy texture to work with, and they look amazing on the skin. So I love these. These totally surprised me. Okay, so for best blush palette, I almost mentioned the Natasha Denona Bloom Blush and Glow palette. I don't know where mine is. I told you guys a while ago that I somehow lost mine. I have like a pretty small house. I don't own a ton of things. I will say that the room where I film videos is always a little bit of a mess because I always have like 85 videos in mind and makeup everywhere, but I've never actually lost a product. I think it must have made its way accidentally into one of my declutter bins that I usually give to friends and family. So it's not the end of the world. I would have mentioned that one, but I do have one that comes in as a close second, and that is the BH Cosmetics Truffle Blush Palette in Vanilla Cream. This formula is so good. And again, they have so many options. They have a bunch of different quads to choose from. I chose this one because I felt like the colors were shades that I would reach for a lot, but these are so blendable and smooth. They look amazing on the skin. This palette does have a little bit of a vanilla scent, which I personally love, but they have brighter palettes, they have deeper palettes, they have so many great options, and I think this palette retails for $12. So for $12, you get 4 different blush options. You can mix them together, use them alone. I love the fact that it's so small and compact. It's not bulky, it's cute. Everything about this is perfect. So this is definitely my favorite blush palette. And the last question I added in was a formula that I want to try. So what's on my wish list? And that would be the new Milk Cosmetics Digital Duo Blushes. They almost look like highlighters. So I feel like they're kind of like a blush highlighter hybrid. They would be so beautiful on the cheeks. The one shade that I wanted, which I can't think of what it is off the top of my head, was sold out, so I almost bought another shade. They're a little bit more expensive, but I think at some point this year I will grab one of those because they're so pretty, and I haven't purchased a lot of blush these days, so that is the next formula that is on my wish list. Okay guys, those are all of the blushes I wanted to share with you in today's video. I'm going to link the videos that inspired me in the description box, so make sure to check them out. If you guys film YouTube videos, I would love to see this. So if you do, be sure to link it in the comments or send it to me on Instagram so I can watch it. But I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about my blush collection. I had fun chatting with you guys. I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you very soon with a new video. Bye.